Today we're diving into one of music's most fascinating self-destruction stories, Mark Morrison, the British R&B sensation who gave us the iconic Return of the Mack before systematically dismantling his own promising career. In 1996, Morrison wasn't just charting. He was dominating global airwaves with a track so massive that industry veterans were making bold predictions. I remember Puffy saying Mark had everything to be the next Michael Jackson of R&B, former Warner exec Leon Williams revealed in a rare 2018 interview. His stage presence, that voice, the international appeal, it was all there. What makes Morrison's downfall so compelling isn't just what happened, but the whispers about why. Sources close to his former management team have suggested that Morrison's infamous decision to send a lookalike to perform his community service wasn't just arrogance. It allegedly stemmed from pressure to complete recording sessions for high-profile collaborations that were supposed to cement his American crossover. Some industry insiders have hinted that these sessions included early work with Timbaland and Missy Elliott that never saw the light of day once his legal troubles escalated. Perhaps most intriguing are the rumors that circulated after Morrison's 2004 collaboration with DMX. According to a former Def Jam staffer speaking on condition of anonymity, X saw something special in Mark and pushed hard for a joint EP, but the label couldn't get past Morrison's reputation for being unreliable. This allegedly created tension between DMX and his label at a time when his own career was facing challenges. Today, we're breaking down the 5 critical mistakes that transformed Morrison from next big thing to cautionary tale, examining how a series of baffling decisions derailed what should have been one of R&B's most legendary careers. The Mack may never have fully returned, but the lessons from his fall are more relevant than ever. Before we dive into how Mark Morrison destroyed his career right after Return of the Mack topped charts worldwide, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're into deep dives like this. We break down the biggest stories in music history without the fluff, just facts, receipts, and a bit of industry reality. And trust me, you're going to want to see how this one ends. Before Mark Morrison became known for his legal troubles, he was making serious waves in the music industry with his distinctive voice and charismatic presence. Born in Hanover, Germany to Jamaican parents in 1972, Morrison spent his early years in Leicester, England, a background that would influence his unique blend of R&B, reggae, and British urban sounds. Morrison's journey to stardom wasn't an overnight success story. He paid his dues in the early 90s, releasing independent singles like Where Is Our Love and Crazy that built him a respectable following in the UK underground scene. What's interesting about this period is how Morrison was developing a sound that stood apart from both American R&B and the British music dominating the charts at the time. Everything changed in 1996 when Return of the Mack dropped. The track was an absolute phenomenon, a perfect storm of catchy hooks, smooth vocals, and production that somehow managed to sound both current and timeless. The song samples Tom Tom Club's Genius of Love, the same sample later used in Mariah Carey's Fantasy, but Morrison and his producers transformed it into something entirely fresh. The numbers tell the story of just how massive this track became. #1 in the UK, #2 on the US Billboard Hot 100, and top 10 placements across Europe, Australia, and beyond. The accompanying album, also titled Return of the Mack, went on to sell over 3 million copies worldwide, an extraordinary achievement for a British R&B artist at that time. What made Morrison stand out wasn't just the music, it was his entire persona. With his sleek suits, sunglasses, and confident swagger, he projected an image of sophisticated cool that set him apart from his contemporaries. He wasn't following trends. He was creating his own lane that blended American R&B sensibilities with distinctly British elements. The follow-up singles from the album, Crazy, Moan and Groan, and Horny, all performed well in the UK, suggesting that Morrison had the potential to be more than just a one-hit wonder. Music critics were taking notice too, with many praising his vocal abilities and the album's production values. At this point in his career, the sky seemed to be the limit for Mark Morrison. This period represents what should have been the foundation for a long and successful career. Morrison had everything going for him: a distinctive voice, strong songwriting, excellent production, and a charismatic image that resonated with fans. He broke in through not just in the UK but globally, something few British R&B artists had managed to accomplish. The stage was set for Mark Morrison to become one of the defining artists of his generation. Just as Mark Morrison's star was rising to its brightest point, a series of legal issues began to cast shadows over his promising career. What makes his story particularly fascinating is the timing. These weren't the troubles of a fading star trying to remain relevant, but of an artist actively sabotaging his own breakthrough moment. The problems actually began before Return of the Mack hit the charts. In 1995, Morrison was involved in a nightclub altercation that resulted in the death of a man named Brian Douglas. While Morrison wasn't directly responsible for Douglas's death, he was convicted of affray, public fighting, and received a 3-month prison sentence. This incident would be just the beginning of his complicated relationship with the law. The real career disruption came in 1997, just as Morrison was poised to capitalize on his international success. He was sentenced to 3 months in prison for attempting to bring a stun gun aboard a plane, a serious offense that prevented him from promoting his music at the critical moment when Return of the Mack was climbing the American charts. This absence from the promotional circuit likely cost him significant momentum in the crucial US market. What happened next has become almost legendary in music industry circles. After being released from prison, Morrison was sentenced to 150 hours of community service for a separate offense. In what can only be described as an astonishing display of poor judgment, he hired a lookalike to perform his community service hours while he flew to Barbados to work on new music. This scheme quickly unraveled, resulting in a 1-year prison sentence for the deception. This particular incident reveals something important about Morrison's mindset during this period. There seems to have been a disconnect between his understanding of consequences and the reality of his situation. While many successful artists have navigated legal troubles, Morrison's approach of trying to game the system rather than address his obligations head-on created additional problems that compounded his original issues. The timing couldn't have been worse for his career. The late 90s were a golden period for R&B crossover success, with artists like Usher, R. Kelly, and Aaliyah achieving mainstream dominance. Morrison should have been right there with them, building on the foundation of Return of the Mack. Instead, he was dealing with legal entanglements that prevented him from maintaining his creative output and public presence. What's particularly notable about this period is how the legal troubles affected Morrison's relationship with his record label. Warner Brothers had invested significantly in breaking him in the American market, but his unavailability for promotion and the negative publicity surrounding his legal issues strained this crucial partnership. The music industry operates on momentum, and Morrison's legal problems effectively brought his career momentum to a screeching halt at the worst possible time. The early 2000s represented a period of attempted career rehabilitation for Mark Morrison. After serving his prison sentence, he returned to music with the determination to recapture the success he had achieved with Return of the Mack. However, the landscape had changed dramatically during his absence, and the path back to prominence would prove more challenging than anticipated. In 2002, Morrison released the single Just a Man/Best Friend through his own label, Mack Life Records. This move toward independence reflected both the changing music industry and perhaps Morrison's desire for greater control over his career after his experiences with Warner Brothers. The single received modest attention but failed to make a significant commercial impact. The following year saw the release of Innocent Man, a track whose title seemed to directly address Morrison's legal troubles and public perception. Despite some positive critical reception, the single didn't chart significantly. This pattern would become familiar in Morrison's post-Mack career, quality music that struggled to find the audience it deserved, largely due to the momentum lost during his legal battles. What's particularly interesting about this period is Morrison's relationship with the American market. In 2004, he collaborated with DMX and Elephant Man on the track Innocent Man, Misunderstood, an apparent attempt to re-establish himself in the US through association with prominent American and Jamaican artists. The strategy showed awareness of how the industry had evolved, with collaborations becoming increasingly important for cross-market appeal. By 2006, Morrison was ready for a more substantial comeback attempt with the album Innocent Man. However, the project faced numerous delays and distribution issues. When it finally saw limited release, it didn't receive the promotional support needed to reach a wide audience. This period highlights how difficult it is to rebuild industry relationships once they've been damaged. Even with new music ready to go, Morrison struggled to secure the infrastructure necessary for a successful release. Throughout the late 2000s and early 2010s, Morrison continued to release music sporadically, including singles like Dance For Me, 2009, and I Am What I Am, 2013. Each release was framed as a comeback, but none managed to capture the public imagination the way Return of the Mack had. The music industry's rapid evolution during this period, particularly the shift toward digital distribution and social media promotion, presented additional challenges for an artist trying to reconnect with his audience. What makes Morrison's career trajectory particularly poignant is that throughout these attempted comebacks, his talent remained evident. His voice was still distinctive, his production choices were generally solid, and he maintained the charismatic presence that had initially made him a star. The primary obstacles weren't artistic but related to industry perception, promotional support, and the difficulty of overcoming his established narrative as a troubled one-hit wonder. In 2013, Morrison announced plans for a comeback album titled I Am What I Am, featuring collaborations with Trey the Truth, Crooked Eye, and Jazz Fa. While the project generated some buzz, it faced similar distribution and promotion challenges to his previous efforts. This pattern of announced projects that either arrive in diminished form or fail to materialize entirely became another recurring theme in Morrison's later career. While Mark Morrison's career trajectory didn't fulfill its early promise, Return of the Mack has achieved something remarkable. It has transcended its era to become a cultural touchstone that continues to resonate with new generations of listeners. This phenomenon offers an interesting contrast to Morrison's personal career challenges. The song's enduring popularity is evident in its streaming numbers, which far exceed what might be expected for a 90s hit by an artist who didn't maintain mainstream visibility. On platforms like Spotify, Return of the Mack has hundreds of millions of streams, numbers that rival or exceed many contemporary hits. This digital afterlife has kept Morrison's name and most famous work in the cultural conversation even when he himself wasn't actively releasing music. What's particularly fascinating is how Return of the Mack has been embraced by successive generations through sampling, remixes, and cultural references. Artists from various genres have either sampled the track or paid homage to it, including Nevada and Mark Morrison himself on the 2017 remix, Return of the Mack Remix, which featured Fetty Wap and achieved modest success on streaming platforms. The song has also maintained a strong presence in popular culture through its use in films, television shows, and commercials. Its instantly recognizable hook makes it perfect for scenes requiring a nostalgic 90s reference or an upbeat moment of triumph. This consistent media presence has helped introduce the track to listeners who weren't even born when it was originally released. Social media has played a significant role in keeping Return of the Mack relevant as well. The song has become a popular choice for TikTok videos, memes, and social media moments celebrating comebacks of all kinds. The phrase Return of the Mack itself has entered the lexicon as shorthand for any kind of comeback or return to form, further cementing the song's cultural impact beyond its musical merits. What makes this ongoing legacy particularly interesting in relation to Morrison's career is the disconnect between the song's continued success and the artist's public profile. Few casual listeners who recognize and enjoy Return of the Mack could name another Morrison track or describe his career trajectory. This creates a unique situation where an artist's work has achieved a kind of immortality, while the artist himself has remained largely in the shadows. This phenomenon raises interesting questions about artistic legacy in the digital age. In previous eras, a one-hit wonder might gradually fade from public consciousness entirely. Today, streaming platforms and social media can keep individual songs alive indefinitely, creating a new category of artist, those whose specific works outshine and outlast their broader careers. For Morrison himself, the song's enduring popularity represents both a blessing and a challenge. On one hand, it has provided ongoing royalties and maintained a level of name recognition that most artists from the mid-90s no longer enjoy. On the other hand, it has created a situation where any new music or comeback attempt is inevitably measured against a 25-year-old hit that has achieved almost mythical status in pop culture. In more recent years, Mark Morrison has shown signs of coming to terms with his complex legacy while still maintaining artistic ambitions. His approach to his career in the 2010s and beyond reveals an artist grappling with his past while attempting to chart a new path forward. In 2014, Morrison made headlines when he announced plans to open a recording studio in Leicester, his hometown. This project was framed not just as a business venture, but as a way to give back to the community and provide opportunities for young artists. Morrison spoke about wanting to help talented individuals avoid some of the pitfalls he had encountered in his own career, a reflection of how his perspective had evolved over the years. This community-focused approach continued with his Mack Life Charitable Foundation, which aimed to work with at-risk youth. These initiatives suggested a desire to transform his own difficult experiences into something positive for the next generation. There's something particularly poignant about an artist whose career was derailed by poor decisions now working to help others make better choices. Musically, Morrison has continued to release material intermittently. In 2017, he collaborated with Tory Lanez and Jeezy on the track Levitate, showing his willingness to work with contemporary artists. The song received modest attention but demonstrated that Morrison was still capable of creating relevant music that complemented modern production styles while maintaining his distinctive vocal approach. In 2018, Morrison announced a comeback tour called Return of the Mack Reloaded, embracing rather than running from his most famous work. This willingness to celebrate his signature hit while presenting it alongside newer material showed a more balanced relationship with his past than he had sometimes displayed in earlier comeback attempts. Social media has provided Morrison with new ways to connect with fans and control his own narrative. Through platforms like Instagram, he's been able to share updates on his projects directly, bypassing the traditional media that often focused exclusively on his past troubles rather than his current work. This direct artist-to-fan communication represents a significant change from the environment of the 90s when his career first developed. What's particularly interesting about Morrison's recent career phase is his apparent acceptance of his unique place in music history. Rather than fighting against the one-hit wonder label or insisting on being evaluated solely on his new material, he seems to have found a way to honor Return of the Mack while still maintaining his creative drive. This more balanced perspective suggests a level of maturity and self-awareness that wasn't always evident in his earlier career. In interviews from this period, Morrison has spoken with more openness about his past mistakes, acknowledging how his own actions contributed to his career challenges. This reflective stance represents significant growth from the young artist who once sent a lookalike to perform his community service. There's a wisdom that comes through in these conversations, the perspective of someone who has experienced both extraordinary success and profound setbacks. Despite never recapturing the commercial heights of his breakthrough hit, Morrison has achieved something perhaps more valuable: longevity and survival in an industry notorious for chewing up and discarding talent. The fact that he continues to create music and maintain a presence in the industry more than 25 years after Return of the Mack speaks to both his resilience and his genuine passion for music. Mark Morrison's story serves as a powerful reminder of how talent alone isn't enough to sustain a music career. The combination of poor decisions, legal troubles, and bad timing can derail even the most promising artist. Yet there's also something inspiring about his persistence and refusal to be defined solely by his mistakes or his biggest hit. In the ever-changing landscape of music, perhaps the greatest achievement is simply staying in the game and continuing to create on your own terms.